Okay, so here we are, the spiritual healing class today. So I'm happy that you're here. We're starting with The Art of Spiritual Healing by Goldsmith. And we had our first session with that, say, as the first class in this series. And now we're continuing. And I don't know if you have the book or you downloaded the PDF that's available. That's a great book to read and discover things in. So that's what we're going to do today too. But before all that, we quiet ourselves down just to come into a meditative sphere, like relax, 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 let go. Don't forget to breathe. Sigh. We're not going anywhere. We're just leaving the world for what it is. We're leaving everything behind that we treasured so much a minute ago. So this is again our time to become still and receptive and actually taking a look at certain things regarding spiritual healing and how that works in us. And how, what Joel gives for instructions for spiritual healing workers. That's very interesting too. So, first of all, we will be dealing with, how is your consciousness being developed as an healing consciousness? Like, what needs to occur for that? What is actually the real happening that makes your awareness, your consciousness, a healing consciousness? So we have been practicing, we have been doing all kinds of exercises. You are on the spiritual path. You have chosen to do certain activities to come to a deeper experience for yourself in your healing, in your transformation, recognizing the truth of who you are more and more. You start to see that everywhere and everyone that you meet. So this is, the summary of a healing consciousness. But see, the practice of it, or the consequences of it for you as an individual in this healing, transformational path, the consequences for you are different. Like, you can meet it on different levels. This is what I'm saying. It's like you seem to still have a daily life in which you can do things and get yourself lost in certain projects. But then you return back to this presence, to this moment, to this stillness, to this being completely here in this moment, receiving whatever is given to you as words, as stillness, as, a moment of presence and peace. Or who knows what is going to happen, how things are going to be revealed to you. So in this is, you've been hearing this, like this has been told to you many times. But now it's like, okay, so imagine yourself being in this practice, which is the truth of you. It's like you're in this practice one way or the other. You're practicing to become open and receptive and let something occur to you. But at the same time, you cannot fall back into a passive role as a student or something. It's like, no, wait a minute. It is time to stand on your feet and actually starting to apply what you learn. And coming into how does this, translate into what's being done by me, or how to express this through myself? How can I do that? Well, like, which way is really, part of my expression of this? How does that take shape? Or what are the opportunities that I have and use in order for that to extend, or to shine my light, or to extend the love that I know to be true? See, the thing with, and this I'm speaking from my own experience, obviously, is like the thing that you discover, that I discovered for myself, is then first you seem to be on a spiritual path, doing this for yourself to discover who you are. And sooner or later you discover it's like, well, it's not, say, just about me having a great experience of the love of God. Like, that's not all of it either. So it continues to expand. And I suddenly discovers like, oh, to give this away and to recognize this in my brother, sister, and to my brother, if I recognize this in my brother, the joy is ours, we can share this together. And setting each other free, and not because we want to do that or something. It's like, no, this is a miraculous occurrence. It spontaneously happens, and that becomes my greatest joy. I'm literally feel that I'm healed by your happiness, so it is not focused on my personal gain or something. It's like, no, this is in a shared experience. I discovered that I'm getting I'm getting so happy by seeing the healing that takes place around me, in me, through me, with you, so it expands continuously. And that was, to me, a total eye-opener when I discovered it. It's like, oh, this is not just, even though I'm responsible and all that, right? Like, we know all these things, like, I'm responsible for what I see, sure, absolutely. But it is not because of the fact that I'm held responsible for all of this. No, it's like, no, there's an invitation to join with you and to express my love to you, to see like how lovely you are and how full of light you are. And seeing that is coming back to me as a real gift, like the feeling I get with that too. It's like, now suddenly this becomes very constructive, like, and not that something needs to be built or anything. No, it's more like the joy that we share becomes a certainty in me, and that is what is lovely, and that is what extends. So the words of Joel are of course different than mine, but really doesn't matter. So it is fun to read this. So in chapter 4, I think it is part 2. Yeah, part 2, spiritual healing, the role of treatment. He dives right into developing a healing consciousness. This is totally lovely. So I read a couple of paragraphs from it and stop if I feel that I want to share something about it. So here's a definition of treatment. Treatment is a technique employed to lift consciousness to such an elevation that a contact with God is established, which permits spiritual power to flow into human activity. It is a recognition of spiritual truth, the purpose of which is to reveal an already existing state of divine harmony. This realization on the part of the person giving the treatment reveals the spiritual identity of the one who has asked for healing, so that he can be seen as he spiritually is in the image of God and likeness. So that is on page 38 of the PDF, at least that's one I have here. So it's like treatment is a technique employed. So that's, you can also say it's like because the idea of treatment sounds like something is being treated here. It's like, no, this is an invitation. This is the word I use a lot. It's like it's an invitation to have an immediate contact with God. It is an invitation to come to a moment of recognition of the truth of who you are. And that's a lively experience, like we said in the previous hours. Like the thoughts of God, the aliveness of God is starting to flow through you. It starts to move you, like it comes deeply in you, or it is deeply coming to life in you, in your awareness. So this is the invitation for the treatment, and for the moment that we come together, a moment of communion, a healing moment, a shared moment of remembering the truth of who we are. Okay, so skipping a few paragraphs. Here's another expression. Real spiritual progress begins when a person is no longer preoccupied with either human good or evil, health or disease, wealth or poverty, but is able to penetrate beyond these to the Christhood, which is his spiritual identity. So real spiritual progress begins when you go beyond, say, the dualistic thinking. So I'm just repeating pretty systematic some things that Joel is sharing here, just to get some get some facts in line. So these are not really facts, as well as, like, they're all talking about, like, beyond, in fact, beyond the appearances, beyond your ideas of good, bad, healthy, wealthy, rich or poor, all these polarities, you go straight beyond them, coming into the place where you literally see this dissolve. So that can be expressed in many ways. It's like, if you see this as a black hole setup, the moment that you're still around the edge of thinking that you can hold on to something, or thinking that you can move around in polarities and think that way, thinking in cause and effect, and in black and white, and in before and after, and say there's still time involved, and suddenly you see that you move closer to the edge of the black hole, in which you really start to lose these ideas, to come into a deeper feeling inside yourself too, in which you actually start to feel completely drawn to truth and to the love of God. Like that is a real temptation to look over the edge of the black hole, to look over the edge and see yourself diving deeper into that black hole, to the point of no return, where you suddenly are literally being sucked into this in a way that you never experienced before. It's like, whoa, I was afraid it was going to happen, but now we're in the middle of it and not even having time to think about it. So being completely, into this compacted you-ness, the compacted you-ness, where you feel that you die in your ideas, moving through that and seeing that you come out on the other side as a newly born something completely new, as a new God, so to speak. You end up on the other side, completely aware of the fact that you are what love is, and light and extension, not worrying about any of the dualistic thoughts that you had a moment ago. So this is just a representation of something that occurs to you in your spiritual progress, because when you no longer are concerned with the dual thoughts, you come closer to the edge, and you dive deeper into it, and the attraction of God becomes like humongous, like great and overwhelmingly great, because there's nothing that it compares anymore. There's nothing else it wants. So it's like a fly flying to the sun, like that. It gets burned, coming closer to the sun, everything disappears. It's a bit like that. Okay, so here on page 40, it's Joel shares this. If God, divine love, is caring for its own, must it not be clear that the law and the love of God are sufficient to maintain God's creation harmoniously, joyously, and perfectly? See, and this is a representation of the certainty that you go into in meeting, in, say, inviting yourself in for a new experience, for an experience with someone, with yourself, in a healing setup, or who knows how this is going to be presented to you, what occurrence or occasion is given to you to practice this. So it is a recognition, and it is coming from your certainty that God is God. God is whole and perfect. Like you start to see that. You suddenly, for one moment, don't make an exception on this. You allow this moment. It's like you allow this moment to be whole. So this is really your invitation for right now too. It's like, what else is going on? Like, are you willing to let this moment be complete and whole? Because it holds everything in it. It is made for it. It is the recognition to go beyond the idea that I'm telling you something, or that you sit over there and listen and I'm here on this side and telling you something. It's like, no, that completely disappears. You can allow yourself to completely let that dissolve, that idea, and see that there's a possibility to join in the light, in God, in the perfection that you are. So that can happen right now. It doesn't need anything else. So this is a healing moment. This is your spiritual healing class, if you want. Like, this is your spiritual healing moment. Why not allow this? Why not practicing this in this instant, and not just listen or something? It's like, no, this is an active occurrence in the sense that you can allow this to be whole and perfect. You can allow this moment to reveal the truth of who you are. So thank you for that. That's a beautiful invitation. I accept. Thank you for giving that to me. Wow. Okay, so here's another thing. So I'm skimming through this just to come up with some ideas that Joel shared. Every call for help always involves a person or persons, a condition of the body, a condition of the business, or a condition of the mind. Nevertheless, whatever the nature of the problem is, the treatment is the realization of the problem as but the carnal mind, and the treatment always remains on the level of God. So it's like, well, we get to the point, and this is say, your own resistance speaking, in fact. It's like, whatever the reason that you think you are asking for help might be, or from anyone that comes to you, or you when you come to me, or when I come. So it's like, whatever the problem is, appears to be, that's not going to be it. Like, well, that problem takes place in your experience of yourself, in a superficial place of your consciousness. That is not what we're really dealing with. The whole situation and problem can change, of course, but that's not what we practice here. So we are actually practicing coming together in this moment to allow healing to occur, and seeing that reunites us in our awareness of everything that's given, to dwell in this place of wholeness, and see that everything takes care of itself in that it's complete fulfillment. So I want to actually go through this to to end up in the next one, and that's the practical instructions. So, all right, so we're doing good on time. So Joel says here, I think we can do that too. So here's a good reminder to rest. This is on page 43. Rest will never come, nor will peace, as long as you are waiting for a great big God to do something to an error. Peace will come only when you can sit quietly in the realization, thank you, Father. All I expect of your word is that it will burst the bubble, pierce the veil, because harmony already is. It would not be here waiting to hear your voice if I would not be here waiting to hear your voice if I believed there were inharmony and discord. So thank you, Father. All I expect of your word is that it will burst the bubble, pierce the veil. Okay, so that's the thing that we're going to do. It's like, okay, so let that happen. Allow this bubble to burst, the bubble of your self-containment, the bubble of your human frame of reference, of your idea about what your situation is, your idea about what you think is wrong in this whole setup, in this whole situation. So let this bubble burst. So that's great. So yeah, let it be burst. It will be great, you know. It's like, oh, take everything away that isn't. Just allow me to see it for what it is and see it disappear. That is totally lovely. That is what a miracle would be, right? It's like suddenly I can remember again, because all the debris that's right in front of my vision, so to speak, is just being lifted. It's just being seen for what it is. Okay, so going chapter 6, what is it? 7, chapter 7, practical instructions to workers. So that is interesting for me to read that too. So one of the things that Joel says here is this: the first requisite for any person who practices spiritual healing, even if only for himself, is develop spiritual consciousness, because all healing is the result of individual consciousness, yours or mine. It is not dependent on God. It's not dependent on God consciousness or Christ consciousness in the abstract, but on the individual consciousness lifted to the heights of Christ consciousness, which is the God power that makes it possible to do the works of God. If, however, the practitioner does not keep his consciousness filled with truth and love, those who touch him on the life's highway will not find him doing the works of God, spreading harmony and peace abroad in the world. So there's a little bit of a warning in there too. So it's like, okay, so the first thing is then to remember your spiritual, like you need yourself to be like dwelling in the place, being in the zone, being in the, receiving the spark, so to speak, feeling that energy. And so how is that going? How are you doing that? Are you practicing that? Are you what do you do for it to feel that? So your practice and daily exercises, that's great. And then what? How does this develop? How can you do this? So lots of questions like how do you do this? See, a lot of it is taking time to be open, to sink deeper into your consciousness, to have a different experience of yourself. Say, to come into the practice of doing that. Then you see that things change and you start to value that in yourself and in others who you suddenly start discover who are doing actually the same thing. Like I really needed to come in touch with others on the path to make sure that actually to discover what was going on with me. I had no idea what was going on with me when I had my first awakening experiences. Like, it took years, in my case, it took years to actually discover that it was an awakening experience, which is pretty wild, you know. It's like, but this is where you need others for, then, in the sense of, yeah, you come in touch with the like-minded ones, or you meet a teacher, or you meet someone who actually confirms something in you because he recognizes it. See, and that is essential in the development of your trust in your own process, in what's going on in you. So, and how do you practice that? Well, for me, it was like I had to put so much energy in. I had to dance a lot. I had to breathe a lot. I had to sit still by myself and actually do the exercises, listen to tapes, listen to instruction, going to teachings and following up by that. But see, the most that actually happened for me was in the moments that I was in the middle of a real intense situation in my life, where I actually discovered I have no idea what would be the best in this moment, but I know that I don't want this situation any longer. Like, there must be a different way of looking at this in which I can actually move forward into a greater openness or a greater expanded awareness. There must be a way to come in touch with that. And that's where it really happened for me, like, and happens still. It's like when you become completely aware of the impossibility of the situation that you think that you're in, that makes it like, that's a real trigger for a different experience of yourself. So some get it by being in a painful situation. You can say that too. It's like, well, when the pain gets big enough, then maybe you want to bend your knees. Then finally you want to give up. You come to the point where you give up and understand that you have no idea what anything is for. So you relied on your spiritual knowledge as far as you knew it, and you thought it was sufficient, and that was it. I was convinced of that for a long time. It's like, oh, this is already enough. Now I know all of this. And then you come into certain situations, very practical ones, in which you get completely stuck. And then you see, like, oh my God, I have no idea what's the best for me, or how to look at any of this, or how to get out of this situation. So then suddenly you become open to learn or to receive. And that makes all the difference. So I love that. See, that is why practical instructions for workers is, if you are going to work and do something, it's like, well, that's not my experience of it. So this is more my experience of it. In the moments that I got stuck and something is revealed to me to get out of it, suddenly the whole situation changes, because I allow myself to open my mind for one instant to receive some light and allow a change to occur. Those were the moments that those are the moments that I learned something, or was open enough to receive. And say, step by step, you see that change in yourself too, that you start to become more open, that you don't need to go through a death episode before to learn something, but actually can see that all these situations that you're in didn't really matter in the first place. No, it was just you didn't. It's like the tendency to project in the moments of intensity, to project on persons, situations, or events, seeing them as the cause of your, say, not feeling so well or experiencing these intensities. That seemed to be like, that's a very tempting thing, to project that on a certain situation, while this intensity is really taking place right here. So, and that is your possibility to become free of the situation, seeing that it has this intensity has nothing to do with the situation in the first place. But this intensity is representing your desire for a deep light experience, or to move through some healing for yourself. See, then when you don't project it or hook it into time and space, so to speak, but allow it to move through you, then you see that it is just part of the whole process, and it will pass too. It will change. It can be healed just because it moves through you and suddenly it's gone, and you wonder, okay, whatever that was, it's gone now. It dissolved. So like I said, there's no necessity to go through death episodes all the time. And you might have one now and then. Okay, so wonderful. That's okay too, you know. So the interesting thing with these intensities I was talking about, let me continue on that a little bit. It's also like the reason why you say your addictive mind or your addict mind would pick something to say make it softer, gentler, less pain, try to soothe it, you know. The tendency to do that in these intense situations that you go through is amazing. And your mind becomes so creative in convincing you that you should really do that it will be the solution for you. That it sounds too good to be true, and it definitely is so. But it might look very tempting to use it. To think that is a temporary solution, a short track, like a shortcut out of your situation. And you don't need to do that. But like I said, the situation and the persons involved have nothing to do with that. No, this is just the intensity that you are experiencing. And it will change. Just be patient. Wait for the time for it to change instead of getting active and acting it out. So that's part of developing trust and patience. So everyone will recognize this for sure. So Joel says here on page 45, always the healer is the consciousness of any individual who has attained some measure of Christ consciousness, and the measure attained determines the degree of the healing work. So that's always a very interesting expression of Joel when he says in a measure, because in a measure is like, well, it is either Christ consciousness that you're experiencing, or it is nothing that you're experiencing. Like there's no in between. There's not a gradual matter of Christ consciousness. Like it's not gradual. It's like you're either in Christ consciousness or you're not. You're either in light or you're full of it, or you're full of your own ideas. You know, so that to me is like that. I don't know what that means when Joel says that. There's no graduality in it at all. Like, no, you heal. You come into the awareness of Christ consciousness. Absolutely. That is the healing that can take place. That is what extends. Not a little bit of Christ consciousness and a little bit of your own mind or something. It's like, well, that's not going to do it. That's nothing to me. So I don't know what he means with that, but I wanted to mention it. Okay, so here are some almost prayer-like realizations that he tries to verbalize, which are really beautiful to read. Since God is my consciousness, and God or truth fills my consciousness, and is the substance and activity of it, that truth is the substance of the form of everything within my universe, even if it appears as a tree or a flower, an enemy or a friend, everything in my universe responds to that awareness. So in other words, it's like that's the way you're going to see it then. And to bring it back to personal experience, to here and now personal experience, it is like, okay, so are you able to see your brother? Are you willing to open yourself up to see, to really connect with your brother? Or are you defending yourself? Or are you still holding back in some sort of way? The same with flower. Like, are you able to see the flower representing the whole universe? Or are you seeing a flower that is in the garden somewhere, a separate thing there, planted by you? It's beautiful, but it's still a separate thing. It's a bit like that. So I try to illustrate what Joel is sharing here. See, everything that I shared so far has to do with, are you open and willing to allow this to be everything, to be a total experience of yourself? That is the continuing question. Like, whether you read the whole book or whether you keep this sentence with you, it would be the same thing. It is like repeating itself over and over, recognizing, okay, yes, it's still up to me what I'm going to do with this. Am I willing and open? I'm not? Okay, then I wait. I try again. Here it is. Oh my God, I can't believe what I see. I never saw this before. I never saw my brother like this before. So that is the invitation. And once you see that, the wholeness of it, then you don't want to make it you don't want to make an exception to what you see. There's no exception to the love of God. So that is your task then, after you see it. Like, okay, I've seen this. Now I'm not going to pick up any ideas to deny what I just have seen. All right, so I'm leaving it here with the book, The Art of Spiritual Healing. Next week we will take a look at another chapter from this, and it is interesting for me, and I'll end with that. It's interesting for me to use this to see where I find myself in my own awakening, in my own spiritual healing path, in my acceptance of this. What comes to me, and how certain is that? How does that how just Joel's words fit into that, or how do they work together, so to speak, as a continuing exercise for me? Because I come in touch with a lot of material of Joel, and then I read through it. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize that. And some things like, oh, that's a whole different expression of that. Wow, that is also so individual to see how anyone is expressing this and trying to share this or conveying this. It's so perfect, because some of it will resonate with you and some of it won't. And you can trust that completely. Like, it doesn't mean that something goes wrong if that is the case, like, so it frees you to see it like this. All right, so thank you for listening, for being in this class, and being open to receive what's being shared and join in the experience of coming to know the truth, or coming into the totality of this with us, with me. Thank you for that.